Zaria Boone wasn't in Millwood for the scenery, the food, or the small-town charm. She was there because something was rotting under the surface. Every Tuesday and Sunday, like clockwork, 3 officers from the Millwood Police Department gathered at Briar's Grill for steak sandwiches and casual corruption. They laughed loud, spoke freely, and carried themselves like the law didn't apply to them. Zaria didn't speak. She observed. 6 weeks earlier, the FBI had dropped her into Millwood under an untraceable alias. No badge, no backup, just her training, her instincts, and a laptop. She played the role of a polite, middle-aged black woman working remotely, headphones in, coffee always full, eyes down. No one asked who she was. No one noticed her. That was the point. But behind that quiet presence was a mission. Zaria was recording audio, tracing license plates, noting behavior. One cop bragged about a homeless man disappearing. Another joked about dashcam footage accidentally deleted. One mentioned cleaning up a witness. Zaria didn't flinch. Her job wasn't to react. It was to collect, document, and wait, and she was good at waiting. Her notes stretched dozens of pages. She'd already logged meetings, patterns, payout handoffs, even a local judge who used the back entrance. Still, the FBI needed airtight evidence, not just rogue cops, but systemic corruption. Zaria was close, but something shifted. A look, a gesture. A waitress stopped smiling. The manager made a call, glanced her way twice. She felt it, the calm before the storm. Zaria had been invisible. Now someone had started to see her, and in a town like Millwood, being seen could be dangerous. Still, she kept sipping her coffee, eyes steady. She wasn't done yet. It started with a glance, nothing dramatic, just a half-second of eye contact. Zaria had looked up too long from her laptop, and Officer Gerald Parks, the loudest of the 3 regulars, caught her eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He leaned slightly toward the man next to him, whispered something, then resumed chewing his food like nothing had happened. But Zaria knew better. That single moment shifted the air in the room. The next time she came in, the waitress avoided her table. The refill that usually arrived without asking took twice as long. The manager stepped out from behind the bar and cleaned a spotless countertop while watching her through the mirror. It was subtle, but to Zaria it was deafening. She didn't panic. She adapted. She limited her glances, hid her recording device better, stopped writing notes in public. But it was clear the curtain had been pulled back just enough for suspicion to crawl through. At night, in her rented apartment 2 towns over, she backed up her files to an encrypted cloud, reviewed her audio, labeled every interaction. She'd already sent 2 encrypted data batches to the bureau. But she needed one more week. Just one. Millwood wasn't just corrupt, it was protected by silence, fear, and familiarity. People didn't snitch because everyone owed someone something. And those who didn't know better didn't want to. Zaria's mission wasn't just about documenting crimes. It was about proving the system itself had rotted, not just a few men. That took time and subtlety. But subtlety has a price. And the officers at that booth were beginning to notice the quiet woman who always sat nearby. She knew they'd act soon. She just didn't know how soon. Sunday came. Zaria returned to the diner, dressed in her usual neutral tones, laptop in hand, hair pulled back. She sat at her table, third from the corner, back to the wall, clear view of the booth. It had always been about patterns. Same place, same time, same behavior. But today, it felt different. The waitress barely made eye contact. Her coffee cup arrived with a hard clink. "No, can I get you anything else?" Just silence. Zaria remained calm. She opened her laptop, tapped a few harmless-looking tabs, then quietly activated the audio stream. The officers arrived, laughing too loudly, slapping backs. But something in their body language had changed. They didn't just eat, they scanned. Officer Parks looked over 3 times. His eyes lingered. One of the others whispered behind his hand. Zaria didn't panic. She minimized her screen, let the audio run. She reached into her bag slowly, pulled out a pen, clicked it once, then tucked it away. The movement was rehearsed, natural, but it turned on her second recorder. She didn't know how long she had. Her phone buzzed under the table, a signal from the Bureau's secure app. Her handler had reviewed her latest file, confirmation that it was solid. They needed one more session, one more casual conversation about the judge, the missing teen, the cash exchange under the table. She was close, but close could be dangerous. Zaria had played silent long enough. The walls were closing in. She felt it. Still, she didn't move. That would trigger suspicion. The game was still hers, until they made the first mistake. And they would. Zaria's calm wasn't a mask. It was a weapon. And in that small-town diner, Tension simmered beneath every clink of porcelain and muttered joke. The storm was coming. 15 minutes into their meal, the restaurant manager stepped away from the bar. He wasn't cleaning this time. He walked outside, phone pressed to his ear, head turned slightly away from the windows. Zarya watched his reflection in the glass behind the booths. 2 minutes passed, then 5. When he returned, his face was tight, lips pressed, no smile, no small talk. Zarya's senses sharpened. The waitress brought her refill too quickly this time, and didn't look at her once. The coffee spilled slightly, no apology, no napkin offered. The message was clear, something had shifted. Then the front door swung open. 2 officers, uniformed, stern, walked in like they owned the place. They didn't acknowledge the hostess. They didn't look around. Their eyes locked straight onto Zarya's booth. Showtime. She didn't flinch. She didn't shut her laptop. She just calmly closed the screen, folded her hands around her cup, and looked up. "Ma'am," the taller officer said, reaching toward his belt, "we need to see your ID. No explanation, no reason, just presence." Zarya stayed composed. "Why?" she asked, voice even. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he asked a series of questions: who she was meeting, what she was doing there, whether the car outside was hers. It wasn't a conversation. It was an interrogation. In public, designed to shame. "You're acting suspicious," the second officer said. "We got a call." "Suspicious how?" Zarya asked quietly. No one responded. The room had gone still. A few customers were watching. One pulled out a phone, pretending to scroll. Then, without warning, the officer reached across the table and grabbed her purse. Zarya didn't resist. She didn't need to. The trap had just been sprung. Officer Parker unzipped her purse slowly, clearly expecting something: drugs, a weapon, anything to justify their intrusion. But all he found was a phone, a pen, lip balm, a notebook, and a wallet. He opened the wallet, flipped through it, and froze. His face didn't show panic, but something flickered: recognition, maybe even regret. It was already too late. The diner was silent now. Even those who had tried to pretend they weren't watching had stopped mid-bite. A young man at the next table had his phone angled just right, recording everything. Zarya didn't speak. She didn't have to. Then the door opened again. A black SUV had pulled up outside. A man in plain clothes walked in with purpose. No hesitation. He passed the bar, ignored the stunned hostess, and made his way straight to Zarya's table. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a leather badge, and held it up. "Officer Parker," he said, voice calm, tone cutting, "you are relieved of duty, effective immediately." Parker blinked. "What? You just violated federal protocol by laying hands on an undercover agent during an active investigation." Gasps echoed. Zarya remained seated, one hand on her coffee cup, the other in her lap. Calm. Steady. The man turned to the room. "This woman is a federal agent operating under legal authorization. You've all just witnessed an unlawful search. And yes, it's being documented." Zarya finally looked up and smiled. Officer Parker stood frozen, her wallet still in his hand. His mouth parted slightly, but no words came. The second officer stepped back, unsure of what to do next. All around them, the diner remained in suspended stillness. Forks paused mid-air, conversations forgotten, eyes locked on the scene unfolding just a few feet away. Zarya didn't speak. She didn't need to. The moment had already said everything. The man with the badge addressed the room again. "This is not up for debate. This officer crossed a line, and we don't cover for that." Zarya stood slowly, collected her bag, the one they searched without cause, and looped it over her shoulder. She turned to the man beside her and gave a subtle nod. He stepped aside respectfully. She didn't look back. Her steps were measured, calm, but each one echoed like a hammer on glass. She passed the diners who once saw her as invisible. Now they couldn't look away. The video clip was already being uploaded. The footage showed the officers approaching her, the illegal search, the badge reveal. 5 minutes long, but it would travel faster than any story the Millwood Police Department had ever buried. Outside, Zarya stepped into the back seat of the SUV. The door closed gently behind her. She didn't speak. Her handler sat beside her, watching her face. "It's done," she said finally. He nodded. "You just changed everything." Zarya didn't smile. She simply looked ahead. The mission was never about spectacle. It was about facts, proof, and consequences. And now, every part of the Millwood operation had just shifted. Justice had arrived, not with flashing lights, but with a quiet woman and a camera that never blinked. and Millwood would never forget her. By nightfall, the footage had gone viral. No names were needed. The images spoke louder than any headline. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag The Quiet Agent trended in 3 states. And Millwood? It found itself thrust under a spotlight it could no longer control. The video was reviewed by FBI Legal, clean, unedited, verified. Within 24 hours, subpoenas were issued. 3 officers were placed on administrative leave. Officer Parker's badge was already turned in. The chief issued a bland public statement about procedural review and community trust. But the damage was done. One senior lieutenant, captured in Zaria's previous recordings talking about falsifying a report, was indicted by the end of the week. The restaurant manager resigned quietly. No statement. The waitress stopped showing up to work, and the town's defense attorney, known for dismissing racial profiling claims, found himself at the center of a federal ethics probe. Zaria, she didn't celebrate, she didn't go on interviews, she declined all requests. Even her internal debrief was short. The data matched the pattern. Threat confirmed. Operation closed. She had no interest in fame. Her job was never to make a scene, it was to bring down systems built on silence. And Millwood's walls had cracked wide open. Some called her a hero, others called her a ghost. But one thing was clear, Zaria Boone had never needed to shout to make her impact. She listened, she documented. And when the time was right, she let the truth speak for itself. Somewhere far from Millwood, she was already preparing for her next mission. Another town. Another system. Another silence to break. Because justice for Zaria didn't come in waves. It came in stillness, and it stayed. While Millwood's local news scrambled for statements and soundbites, the real work was already moving behind the scenes. Zaria's recordings, weeks of surveillance notes, high-quality audio, timestamps, license plate matches, had been uploaded to the FBI's secure network 48 hours earlier. The incident at the diner? Unplanned, unnecessary, but it became the final proof the Bureau needed. A documented illegal search of a federal agent was the match that lit the fuse. There would be no explaining it away, no public relations spin strong enough to smooth it over. Zaria's work wasn't flashy, but it was thorough. Each conversation was transcribed. Each transaction mapped. Every name cross-referenced. She'd connected officers to false reports, missing dashcam footage, even questionable court rulings. And now, every thread was traceable. The Internal Affairs Unit, armed with everything Zaria had gathered, prepared to move. Across town, conversations shifted. Officers who once laughed at the booth in Breer's Grill now spoke in hushed tones. Files quietly disappeared from desks. Some phones were wiped, but it was too late. The data had already been locked. Zaria sat alone in a temporary field office the morning after. Her laptop open, final report complete. Her handler entered, glanced at the files, and gave a short nod. "You did it," he said. Zaria didn't respond. She looked out the window instead, watching a school bus pass. Kids shouting through open windows, their voices rising over the engine. For them, she thought. Not for the headlines, not for revenge. For the ones who never got to be loud. For the ones who disappeared without a camera rolling. The mission was over, but the echo would remain. And Millwood? It was finally under the lens, exactly where it needed to be. By Wednesday morning, the diner was nearly empty. Locals didn't want to be caught near Ground Zero. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Closed for renovation." No one believed it. Whispers filled grocery aisles and school pickup lines. People who had once greeted each other with smiles now avoided eye contact. The clip had changed everything. It wasn't just that a woman was searched illegally, it was who she was and what she'd been doing all along. Did you hear she was FBI? She was right there the whole time. The people of Millwood had been part of the problem, and they knew it. Not through action, but silence. They had seen the jokes, the casual cruelty, the officers who acted untouchable, and they said nothing, because it was easier. But now, they couldn't unsee it. The footage had forced them to confront the truth. A truth that didn't come with a siren, but with a soft voice, a still presence, and a badge no one saw coming. Some rallied in support. She was brave. She saved this town from itself. Others were defensive. That's not all of us. She tricked us. But Zaria never needed validation. She wasn't there for applause. She'd seen this pattern before. First denial, then discomfort, then anger, and finally, if people were willing, accountability. The mayor announced an emergency town hall. The police department promised internal reviews. But the real accountability wouldn't come from statements. It would come from actions. Zaria wouldn't be there to see them. Her mission was complete, but Millwood had to decide what came next, change or cover up. The town was under a microscope now, and this time, someone was recording. Back in Washington, Zaria submitted her final mission log. It was efficient, clean lines, bullet points, zero emotion. Names, dates, violations, attached files. Her job wasn't to tell stories, it was to deliver evidence. But her handler, Agent Keene, paused at the last entry. "No summary?" he asked. Zaria looked up. The footage was the summary. Keene smirked slightly but said nothing more. He knew better than to question her methods. Zaria wasn't loud, but she was relentless. Her reputation in the Bureau was quiet legend, operatives who vanished into small towns and came back with mountains of truth. She stood, closed her file, slipped it into the encrypted transfer case. "You know," Keene said finally, "that moment in the diner, it could have gone very differently." Zaria nodded. "I counted on it." Keene raised an eyebrow. She explained simply, "They always act the same. When they think no one's watching, that's what made her so effective. She never intervened too early, never lost control. She let them reveal themselves. That was the brilliance of her work, not in confrontation, but in patience. And patience, in a system designed to bury evidence, was the ultimate weapon." Before leaving, she paused at the hallway mirror, straightened her collar. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing memorable. By the time she exited the building, she was just another face in the crowd. And by the next morning, she would be on another assignment. A new town, a new set of secrets, but always the same mission: listen, observe, document, expose. Because in places where people still believed power made them untouchable, Zaria Boone would be watching. And her silence would be the loudest sound in the room. The badge in Zaria's wallet wasn't shiny or decorative. It didn't carry special meaning to most people. But to her, it was a reminder, not of authority, but of responsibility. She didn't wear it to get free coffee or to impress strangers. In fact, most of the time, she kept it hidden. Her weapon was observation, her shield was silence, and her truth was undeniable. What happened in Millwood wasn't unique, it was just exposed. The town had lived in denial for years. Officers joked about cleaning up the streets, but what they meant was erasing the people who made them uncomfortable, and no one stopped them, until Zaria. But she didn't come in with a speech. She didn't rally protests or post on social media. She ordered coffee, she took notes, she let them speak. And they did. The badge didn't save her in that diner. Her preparation did, her patience, her refusal to become angry or reckless, even when she was surrounded by people who saw her as nothing more than an outsider with a laptop. That badge had seen a lot. It had been through cities and suburbs, farms and towns. It had seen corrupt mayors, racist officers, smug judges and scared citizens. And every time, it returned with stories the system couldn't ignore. Because when Zaria stepped in, she didn't look to control the room. She just needed to be in it long enough for the truth to reveal itself. And it always did. Somewhere in a drawer at the Bureau, her files were filling rows. Not by force, but by facts. And the badge in her wallet? It didn't make her powerful. It made her accountable. The viral video lasted 4 minutes and 32 seconds. No names, no dramatic music, no narration, just raw footage. An officer illegally searching a woman, a silent stare, and a badge revealed like a sword unsheathed. But that clip did more than trend. It broke the illusion. People across the country saw it not just as an isolated moment, but as a symbol, a reminder that abuse of power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's routine, casual, public, dismissed as protocol until someone holds a mirror to it. In Millwood, students discussed it in classrooms. Pastors rewrote Sunday sermons. Local newspapers, once dismissive of accountability, now printed headlines they couldn't ignore. Unseen no more. Who watched the watchers? The woman with the quiet eyes. Zaria watched none of it. She never logged into Twitter, never opened YouTube to see her face freeze-framed mid-glance. She didn't need to. The outcome wasn't about her. It was about the system that exposed itself. In the Bureau's media division, analysts measured impact, spike in tip-in calls, 3 other departments now under federal review, and community groups suddenly filing long-ignored complaints. All from a single clip. But that clip only existed because someone waited. Someone didn't shout, didn't argue, didn't run. Zaria had stayed calm, let the silence speak, and trusted the truth to land where it needed to. Her story wasn't cinematic, but it was true, and that made it powerful. Because sometimes the most viral moments aren't planned. They're earned. And this one? It didn't just show injustice, it proved someone was finally watching. Every town has people like Zaria, quiet, overlooked, underestimated, people who listen more than they speak. People who don't announce themselves, but know exactly when to act. You might pass them in a grocery store, sit beside them at a cafe, never knowing what they're carrying. Zaria never chased recognition, she avoided it. But in rooms filled with unchecked power, she was the one person they didn't see coming. Her silence had a purpose. Every day she sat in that diner, sipping her coffee, she wasn't waiting for a hero moment. She was building a case, thread by thread, smile by smile, bribe by bribe. She watched, not because she enjoyed it, but because someone had to. Millwood never suspected her, and that was their greatest mistake. Because while they laughed, while they bragged, while they dismissed the cries of the unheard, Zaria listened. And when she spoke, she didn't use a microphone, she used evidence. Now, Millwood faces the weight of its silence, not just from the police department, but from everyone who knew something was wrong, and said nothing. That's the uncomfortable truth Zaria left behind, a truth that asks, who else saw, who else heard, who else stayed silent? Zaria's work was done, but her impact would remain long after the clip stopped playing. In conversations whispered behind closed doors, in reforms pushed reluctantly into policy, in officers who now think twice before raising their voice. Because justice doesn't always come from the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it comes from the one you never noticed until it was too late. Zaria Boone never raised her voice. She never slammed her hand on the table, never argued back. She didn't threaten, didn't warn, didn't protest. She didn't need to, because she had the truth. And the truth, when captured, time-stamped and undeniable, speaks for itself. She left Millwood without ceremony. No press, no photo ops, just a closed laptop, a clean apartment, and a full report on the bureau's desk. Her badge was stored. Her equipment returned. Another mission done. But the story of Millwood would live on, in courtrooms, in policy, in whispered apologies from those who once looked the other way, and in future agents trained using the footage she unintentionally made famous. Zaria never expected to go viral. She didn't even watch the clip. But she knew its power. Because that clip didn't just show a corrupt cop. It showed what happens when someone assumes they're above consequences and gets reminded in front of everyone that they're not. Zaria's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy, it was strength. And as she boarded the train to her next assignment, another town, another web to untangle, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Millwood was no longer hidden. The mirror had been held up. And sometimes that's all it takes. Not a badge, not a gun. Just someone willing to listen long enough to expose what others pretend not to see. Zaria Boone came to Millwood with one goal: gather the truth. What she left behind was a warning: we are watching now. And this time, we're not looking away.